Let's talk about what ethical inventiveness is. At different points in history, people have had different ethical views. For example, is it right or wrong for women to work outside the house? Is it right or wrong to own slaves? And for those views to change, somebody has to come up with a new moral idea, a new idea of what is right and wrong, and more importantly, why something is right or wrong. And the ability to come up with these new ethical beliefs, these new ethical ideas, these new moral principles, in this question is called ethical inventiveness. Let's talk about some actual examples of ethical inventiveness so we can put this in some historical context. Over here you see a picture of John Locke. John Locke argued that what made a government just is that it had the consent of the governed. So it's right for somebody to be a president if that person has gotten permission from the people that he's the president over. And the way that he gets that permission, according to John Locke, is through some kind of formal consent, and generally through voting. But what about before? So John Locke came up with this new idea, consent of the governed. He had ethical inventiveness. He invented a new ethical idea that said a ruler justly rules. A ruler has the right to rule. It is morally right for a ruler to be in charge if he has consent of the governed. But what did we have before that? Well, let's look at somebody else who invented the ethical idea before John Locke. Before John Locke, people said that kings ruled by divine right. And this was brought forth by King James VI of Scotland. And here was his argument. He basically said that if you say that the king, the next king, is going to be the son of this first king, and that's how kings were chosen. Each king is the son of the previous king. If we say that the son of this king, the oldest son of this king, is going to be the next king, guess what we get to do? We let God pick the soul of that king. We tell God it's going to be this body. This is the body that the king is going to have. So whatever soul you think is the right soul to put into that body, go ahead and put that soul into the body, God. We're going to leave it in your hands. And so when that king took power, he argued through that process, that king ruled not by the permission of the people, not by consent of the governed, but by divine right. In other words, God had chosen that soul to inhabit that body so that that person would be the king. And therefore, his kingness was not open to debate by the people at all. This power came directly from God. The political power came directly from God, and the people had no business contradicting Almighty God. And that was his idea. So first we had his idea, then it was challenged by John Locke, who argued for the principle of consent of the governed. And while he did that, he argued against the King James's argument about divine right. Now, this is really cool stuff. The idea that you can create all these totally new philosophies, these new moral philosophies, and it's really cool to see how historical forces and historical incentives shape that. If you guys want to learn more about that, here's a book I would recommend. It's by Howard Bloom, a great philosophical and scientific and cultural thinker. He wrote this book called The Lucifer Principle. Don't worry, it's not a sacrilegious book or anything like that. He talks about how different historical forces and other types of economic forces lead to the creation of various new cultural and moral and theological ideas.